Ahoy! A lot of things about starting out in New World have changed with Season 10 when it comes to progression, what you want to prioritize, and what you want to do, especially once you've reached max level. So I'm going to tell you what I believe are the best approaches currently to the leveling process and beyond, and hopefully that will help you as a new or even a returning player. We're going to gradually go through the progression to level 70, and after that we'll talk about the late game content a little bit. Starting out, the first thing you're greeted with is your archetype choice. This is not a class that locks you into a specific build forever. So for example, we have the soldier archetype here, which comes with tank and damage stats and starts with a sword as well as a hatchet, and we also get certain increases to trade skills. But these trade skill increases are only a temporary boost, and you can use any other weapon as well. The only requirement is that you find one of them or craft one of them. Likewise, you can move around stats however you want, so you can very quickly turn a sword bearer, for example, into a mystic if that's what you're after. There are, however, two archetypes that are worth considering a little bit more if you are going for efficiency. This is only relevant if you're focused on making gold as quickly as possible, making coin as quickly as possible. And those two archetypes would be the Destroyer as well as the Musketeer. The reason being that both have a trade skill bonus to armoring. There are currently 3 charm types that can be crafted. One of them is not worth it for making coin, that's the skill charms, so that leaves you with 2 trade skills that are relevant. One of them is armoring and the other one is Arcana. However, Arcana can be leveled very easily with a trick that we'll talk about later, and as such, the only one that's really worth considering is armoring. So I would recommend, if you're looking to play a ranged class of any sort, you start with the Musketeer, and if you want to play a melee class, you start with the Destroyer. But once again, not a strict requirement at all, just a recommendation if you want to make coin as quickly as possible. Once you've made it into the game, you should absolutely pick up the main story questline, and your priority should be following this questline. That said, you don't strictly only need to do this. This is just a question of efficiency. If you are purely interested in progressing as fast as possible, then I would literally just do the main story quest, because at this point it gives a ridiculous amount of XP and it's not really worth doing anything else to farm XP anymore. Most advice in that regard is simply dated at this point, especially not if you don't already have a ton of gold. You don't really need to consider side quests because the XP from the main story quest alone is so dramatic that really nothing else matters. If you want some extra XP, anytime you see any blue pages anywhere, just press the interact button and you will get that as a little bonus XP. You don't actually need to read the pages. There's a secondary interact that allows you to just activate them. If you want to gather while leveling is up to you. It can be convenient, especially with skinning, but it is worth keeping in mind that at a higher level you have access to better tools and you will be able to gather a lot quicker. So once again, if efficiency is your main goal, I would skip the gathering initially, but it can be very fun, it can be very satisfying to do that while leveling, so if fun is your focus, go for it. Also, don't be afraid to try out different weapons. I think it's very worth giving different weapons a shot while you can, since you kind of get a feel for them early on and then you can decide what your actual playstyle is, and it may not be what you're expecting. You will unlock plenty of weapon mastery later, so this is not something that you need to be concerned about. If you appreciate this info so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell for more New World info in the future. I go a lot more in depth in a lot of videos, so there will be plenty of you to learn. Once you make it to Everfall, you will also unlock the faction quest, the faction initiation and then advancement. If you want to play with your friends and you are in the same faction, then it can make sense to do that early on. If you just want to focus on leveling first, you can level first and ignore them completely. You can progress through these quests to advance in the faction, but since you have to somewhat pause in between to do faction quests to get your reputation up, I would once again recommend doing that at a higher level, since it's a lot easier than when you get more reputation per quest. There is, however, another quest that I wouldn't skip, which is My Kingdom for a Horse. This is in the north of Everfall. You will see this horseshoe logo, and this is a quest I would not skip because this quest gives you a mount that you can ride at any time. And you just have to interact with this guy and do a little quest for him, and you will unlock the mount and be able to use that anywhere. You can then level your mount and increase the speed by doing these races, these mount quests. You'll see all over the map, and you can kind of progress from one area to the next and unlock slightly harder races. This is worth it because, as you can see, there is a speed bonus every 50 riding skill up until a 200 skill. So if you want to be as fast as possible, which is very worth it in the long run, then you want to reach that level. There is, however, a lazier way to do that with victuals. There are different tiers of this mount food, which you can craft yourself or you can just buy it off the trading post, and that will allow you to slowly increase your riding skill without actually having to do any of the races. With the exception of the basic mount victuals, all of these require vitamins, which you normally get from the races, so this is something that will cost you a little bit of money if you're not doing any of the races yourself. The vitamins, by the way, can be upgraded into higher tiers. What you want to be aware of is that the victuals have riding skill requirements when you go beyond the green mount victuals. These can be used at riding skill 1, but the blue ones, the hearty ones, can only be used at riding skill 75. You want to use them because they give you a lot more XP, but obviously you need to get there first. And likewise, the purple ones, the luxury mount victuals, can only be used at 150 riding skill. And you're limited to feeding the mount 3 victuals per day, so you want to use the most efficient tier at any point, unless you want to take it slow. Once you've unlocked your mount, you want to focus on the main story questline, which will take you all over the map. Eventually you end up in Brimstone Sands. Brimstone Sands, there's one important quest you want to pay attention to, which is up here in this area, which is called the Secrets of the Heart Gem, and allows you to unlock your Heartrune. This is what you see here. This is basically some form of ultimate ability, which can be very strong in certain situations, so I highly recommend getting this one as soon as possible. The Elysian Wilds area is one that you cannot get into until you have progressed to a certain point in the main story and you are actually allowed to enter. It is very worth playing the questline up until this point because many artifacts are locked behind this zone and you might be interested in those later. Also, completing the main story questline provides you with another artifact. Once you reach level 65, you will see a new quest pop up down here called Into Sunset. This is the questline that will get you to the newest territory, to Nighthaven. I recommend following this questline even if you haven't completed the Elysian Wilds questline fully yet, because the XP that you're getting from the Nighthaven questline and some of the gear that you're getting, everything is pretty good, so I think it's very rewarding to switch over to that. It also helps with some late game resources, although many are also available in other zones. Once you reach level 70, I would recommend catching up on your faction questline, since there are some rewards locked behind this that are going to be really interesting for you. On one hand, there is some decent gear that you can get for relatively cheap, which is a nice starting point. And on the other hand, what you're particularly going to be interested in is chromatic seals, because they are a very easy way to make gold early on, since you can craft charms with them, and charms go for a fair bit extra gold over what they cost. For faction advancement, I recommend the quests in Brimstone Sand. The PvP quests here are pretty quick to do, they're pretty close together most of the time. Sometimes you will be unfortunate and get the fort quest, but if not, I can show you what this looks like for the Marauders. You have the 3 quests, you pick up something here, you bring it over here, you claim the area at the same time, you stay there for a little bit, and then you go over here for the 3rd quest and pick up some chests there, and you come back. It's done in 10-15 minutes-ish. And you get a lot of rewards out of that, and you get a lot of faction progression, which allows you to go through the main quest for your faction advancement very quickly as well, because you will basically skip from one point to the next almost. Also, level 70, you probably want to start focusing on maxing out your weapon mastery. Now, normally I would recommend this area in Great Cleave called Battle-Class Crossing, where you can farm Thorpe over and over for very significant weapon XP, and that can be good. However, at the moment there are many other farms that allow you to farm weapon XP while also doing something else, so I don't think it's necessarily worth prioritizing a pure weapon XP farm. Those activities include elite chest runs, which give you a ton of literally everything, the glob farm in Brimstone Sands, where people group up to farm a lot of mobs very quickly and sell the ancient globs that drop from that, and many other spots that also double as farm spots for gear. For example, in Nighthaven you have an area called the Tower of the Sun, which a lot of people are farming. Just make sure you get invited to the raid group to actually get all the rewards. And likewise, a little bit east of that, we also have Mercy Redoubt, which in my opinion is the better farm spot. I have a video where I go in detail about that and why I think you should be doing this farm instead. But either way, it is also good for weapon mastery. And last but not least, there is also the Gorillas farm on the Isle of Zervan, which you'll also see a lot of people do. So there are plenty of places to get weapon mastery and good gear at the same time. By the way, for weapon mastery, if you've done a bit of the season pass, then check your augments in your inventory, because it may be that you have boosters here, and one of the boosters is a weapon XP booster, which will make that go even quicker. For coin, the easiest option, if you don't know what else to do yet, is to just go out in the open world, loot a few chests, chop a few trees, and usually get a few caches with gold, but also do expeditions and go for the random option here, and you'll get a bonus cache with 750 coin, and you get an additional bonus if you queue as a tank or a healer. You get this additional bonus cache here with another 250 coins. Expect that people will just rush through these expeditions for their daily gold, so it's not going to be a very serious run. You're just going to skip through everything and get it done quickly, but it's a nice way if you don't know what else to do yet. Along with that, you can do the Ancient Glob farm once again, which will also give you a decent amount of gold, since the resource is in demand at the moment. The full name is Ancient Glob of Ectoplasm. The Season Pass is something that is generally worth doing, since you get quite a lot of extra nice rewards there, especially as a beginner. What you want to do is do these activity cards as well, stamp them off gradually with the tasks that you're doing here, and that way you'll get some extra progression on the pass. As you can see, I am already on level 90, and we still have 86 days left in the season, just by doing activity cards while I'm doing other things. I would also recommend getting your hands on some basic combat trophies relatively quickly. You can craft these yourself with the right furnishing skill, or you can buy them for relatively cheap off the trading post. The damage increase that you're getting from this is 4% per trophy, and once you have bought 3 houses, that's a total of a 12% increase. So this is worth doing, and eventually you'll probably get to a point where you're going to upgrade to major trophies, but that's just 1% extra damage, so it's not really a super high priority in comparison. The price point obviously goes up quite a fair bit here, as you can see. Another thing you'll likely want to start doing once you reach level 70 is look for artifacts. This is nwdb.info, and as you can see here, one of the most popular items is all the different artifacts that we're having here. In order to find these, you can go under items on the database and then just go to the rarity artifact, and it will show you all of the artifacts available. And if you click on one of them, you will then also be able to find out where you can get it from, because it will tell you it's either contained in something, or maybe it's dropped by something, or it'll say PvP track on the side here, but it will tell you where to get it. Different artifacts are useful for different classes. One that is pretty much always useful is Blood Drinker, especially if you want to play the Catacombs mode, because it gives you a lot more survivability. Unfortunately, you'll sometimes have to wait for the right mutated expedition to come back around. Not all artifacts are always available, because many of them come from mutation level 1+, and it's only 3 mutations at the same time per week. As for chest runs, sometimes called elite chest runs or ECR, those you can usually find in recruitment chat. People will give you an X ECR or something similar, plus ECR. CK, for example, is one of them. And usually you just write the same thing in chat and you will get an invite and you can join them. And then you will see where everyone ends up on the map, and you will be able to find the spot that they're going to. And you just follow along, loot the chests, kill the mobs, and you're all sorted. Now, one thing that I recommended not leveling up first was Arcana and not prioritizing first. That's for a good reason. Once you finish the Nighthaven questline, you will find the recipe Potion of Fool's Sight, which you for some reason can't search from the search bar, but it's under your potions. This is a very, very cheap recipe. You can very easily gather water yourself and a little bit of grave dirt and anima quartz. And this gives you an absolutely ridiculous amount of Arcana XP, as you can see here. This is the first time craft bonus, but even after that it's a very high amount compared to anything that you can craft initially. And this will allow you to skip into the early 100s of Arcana with a minimal amount of crafts, and as such, I think this is way more worth doing than trying to level it any other more tedious way, at least up until that point. This may be nerfed at some point in the future and you may need to craft more actual potions, but for now, I think this is the most efficient way to do that, and as such, you just focus on that once you have actually finished the questline. There are, of course, also other activities like Outpost Rush or PvP in general, Capture the Flag as well in arenas, and Catacombs that are late game focused and also provide you with better gear. So for example, from the PvP rewards, you can get everything that's on the PvP track, many of which are now some of the best items in the game. That said, a lot of this is a little bit more late game focused, and some of it requires you to gear up a little bit more, especially Catacombs. As such, I will cover that in a video that is more specifically focused on late game. If you're interested in that as well, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell to get notified when that comes out. I also regularly update you about any new farms or any new ways to make gold and everything else that may be useful as you progress further into the game. I hope this was helpful, and if you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. That way you can get some early trading tips as well. Thanks to all of my patrons who do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Sloth, out.